In a recent Boston Globe article, former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan said that allowing more skilled immigrants to work in the United States would help keep the income gap from widening. He went on to say, allowing more skilled workers into the country would bring down the salaries of top earners in the United States, easing tensions over the mounting wage gap. And then he added, if we open a significant window for skilled workers, that would suppress the skilled wage level and end the concentration of income. Well, how nice, Mr. Greenspan, for other nations. But brace yourselves, Americans. This stampede over the cliff of integration is taking on all the attributes of the mass suicide of the lemmings. Alan S. Blinder, former vice chair of the Federal Reserve and longtime fan of free trade, is estimating the loss of American jobs in this brave new outsourced world at 40 million. That's right, 40 million. Please note, the policymakers are not the ones who will lose their jobs, but people like you and me will. Yet despite these realities, NAFTA was sold to Americans as a boon to employment. When NAFTA took effect on January 1, 1994, its supporters boasted in the Washington Times that NAFTA would create 200,000 new jobs and expand the manufacturing base throughout the country. Today, virtually everyone knows that Clinton, Carter, Ford, and Bush, along with all the other NAFTA cheerleaders, were dead wrong. Only 17 months later, even the liberal New York Times acknowledged, it is expected that the true job loss under NAFTA will reach 1 million by the end of this year. The Department of Labor, a government agency, reported in 2006 that 1.8 million Americans became eligible for NAFTA's Transitional Adjustment Assistance Program, set up to assist those that had lost their jobs because of NAFTA. Unfortunately, this doesn't tell the entire story. How many Americans simply found another job without applying for this assistance program? It's now estimated that because of NAFTA, between 4 and 7 million Americans have lost their jobs. The Economic Policy Institute has found that between 1994 and 2000, the U.S. lost more than 3 million jobs. 1, 2, 3, or as Mr. Blinder predicts, 40 million jobs lost? Today, most American workers have not yet entered the statistics when they were laid off or fired. They simply settled for less desirable employment and lower wages. When we look at manufacturing and the industry sector, we see that they haven't fared any better either. Hundreds of textile mills and other small manufacturing concerns in the Southeast have closed their doors. Small towns, big cities, states, and whole regions are seeing various stages of economic disaster. Just recently, familiar truck manufacturer Freightliner in Oregon laid off 750 workers. From automobiles to washing machines, from tool and die factories to vacuum cleaners, from mining to technical industries, the industrial giant that was once America is beginning to look like a dying patient on life support. Regardless of your feelings or the nuances of free trade, this integration is causing enormous human suffering to people right here in the USA. But perhaps the most alarming component regarding integration comes from America's leadership. Under a whole series of administrations, rights and freedoms of U.S. citizens are slowly being taken away. Worse, the process is speeding up. This is the most serious matter. Consider George Bush, pictured here with Vicente Fox of Mexico. Also present was Prime Minister Paul Martin of Canada. They met in March of 2005 at a conference to initiate the first stages of a merger between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. But any agreement which involves a merger on any level with two foreign nations is patently unconstitutional. Any U.S. president should know that this act clearly violates the oath of office to uphold the Constitution and the United States. Yet, the push for a merger isn't a partisan issue. Several previous administrations, Democrat and Republican, have pushed for a merger on the deceptively named free trade platform. Many of our leaders have knowingly given up power and independence for international dependence, or integration, as it's called. Here is a statement from the Democratic side in 1993. In a few moments, I will sign 3 agreements that will complete our negotiations with Mexico and Canada to create a North American Free Trade Agreement. That was Bill Clinton. And that situation is also directly related to what we face today. As you might know, the movement away from an independent USA has been happening by small incremental change for many decades. And NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, was the launching pad for much of the current situation. So where exactly is this heading? Some politicians and power brokers within the United States government and industry, along with their counterparts in Canada and Mexico, are currently working to create a new political entity, the North American Union, through the Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America, or SPP. Our own Commerce Department has erected an entire website dedicated to this project. We paid for that, you and I. The plans detailed on the site include a free trade zone with a common security perimeter, which is, in effect, the process of erasing our national borders and expanding those borders to the perimeter of the whole continent of North America. A designer at the New American Magazine created this image that bottom lines the movement's goal. The goal is known as the North American Union, or NAU for short. The Council on Foreign Relations, or CFR, is a private, powerful internationalist club headquartered in New York. It published a document in 2005 titled Building a North American Community. Within it, the submersion of the 3 nations into a new legal and political entity is envisioned. The plan is regional government on more and more levels until merger is complete. Resting on NAFTA as its source of authority, much of the relationship described by this CFR plan is an expansion of the Security and Prosperity Partnership signed by George W. Bush. The Council on Foreign Relations drew up the plans. Clinton built the foundation. Bush Sr. built upon it. The CFR expands it again, and then Bush Jr. continues building. After reading decades of such planning in the Council on Foreign Relations Foreign Affairs, it becomes very clear that they consider a regional government, such as the NAU, simply an incremental step on the way to their ultimate destination of world government. Exactly who and what is the Council on Foreign Relations? Few Americans are even aware of the group. This video clip provides evidence of the CFR's immense power in forging policy in America.
Vice President Dick Cheney speaking at the Council on Foreign Relations on economics and foreign policy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, Les, Pete, I want to thank you all for the warm welcome today. I see a lot of old friends in the room, and it's good to be back at the Council on Foreign Relations. As Pete mentioned, I've been a member for a long time and was actually a director for some period of time. I never mentioned that when I was campaigning for re-election back home in Wyoming, but stood me in good stead. I valued very much my experience, exposure to the tremendous people involved, and the involvement in the ideas and the debates and the great policy issues of the day.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice President. Let me invite one of our oldest and dearest members to begin the questioning, David Rockefeller. And I would say, as David stands to ask his question, that David also played a key role in the formation of this geoeconomic center with ideas and with his generosity as well. David?
Thank you. Mr. Vice President, I just enjoyed so much your whole speech, but I was particularly pleased that you gave such a strong endorsement for the free trade agreement for all the Americans, subject that has been of great concern to me for many years, and particularly recently, and I think it's absolutely essential for the strength of our economy.